Piers Pigou, who joins us now live from Johannesburg. Welcome to the programme, Piers. Mozambique's army says it's back in control of Palma. Tell us the significance and impact that this will have.
Well, for the residents of Palma, many of whom are still not back in the town, there's going to be a great deal of suspicion as to the competency and capacity of Mozambique's armed forces and its army in particular to be able to maintain security in the town, while the insurgents are no longer present in the town after having been in a firefight with security forces for a number of days until a few days ago. The army is putting forward what we see as a kind of a normalization narrative as a way of trying to encourage people to come back. But the surrounding areas of Palma town, the Palma district and neighboring districts remain very insecure. So while they may well have taken the town, this isn't because they have defeated insurgents. Insurgents have simply removed themselves from the town. And we've seen a pattern of this behavior in the way that the armed forces and insurgents have been engaging each other over the last year or so.
And do you think, Piers, that we could see a repeat of what happened in Palma?
Yes, I think there's every likelihood that we're going to see a repeat of that. And I think this is why we're seeing significant levels of insecurity being generated in a number of other towns. I mean, this is not the only part of the province that is facing attack. We've received reports of a number of other attacks in other districts in the province. And whilst the insurgents for the last few months have been only really engaged in low-key attacks, often for sourcing food and so forth, and this led to a narrative that somehow the insurgency was on the back foot. Many analysts watching the situation over a longer period of time were waiting for a larger scale attack, which of course happened on the 24th of March in Palma. So there are real concerns that the security situation in Mozambique is still extremely fragile. And of course, on top of that, we have this burgeoning humanitarian crisis.
And who exactly are these insurgents and what do they want?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, this is a insurgency that has its roots in local discontent that emerged from a sectarian dynamic in the mid-2010s and morphing really into an insurgency from late 2017, on which you've got a sort of parasitic element from Islamic State claiming responsibility for a number of attacks that have taken place. Bear in mind, the Armed Conflict Location Events Data Project has recorded over 850 attacks and clashes in Cabo Delgado over the last 3 years or so. Of that, Islamic State have claimed 46 of these incidents. Now, that is significant. And certainly there appears to be a clear relationship at certain levels between Islamic State and what's going on the ground. But we should caution as to exactly what the nature of that relationship is, because the evidentiary base is still thin. That doesn't mean that the insurgency and the nature of those relationships aren't evolving, as we've seen in other parts of the continent, Boko Haram and so forth. So this is something that we have to watch very carefully. But to reduce this to a Daesh or IS insurgency is at best very simplistic.
That's a good point you make there, because I saw a report saying that this was maybe, you know, the new Syria, the new Iraq for Daesh militants. I want to ask you about what the international community can do. Portugal is sending troops. Is that enough? And what really, practically, can they do to stop this insurgency?
Well, one of the major challenges has been the way in which the Mozambican authorities have handled its relationship with external actors. It has preferred to employ a series of discussions and negotiations with individual countries to try and source equipment and training. Whereas the region, for example, which is having a large meeting started today and will go on tomorrow with 6 presidents in the region meeting, has preferred to promote an integrated strategy towards dealing with this problem. Portugal is going to provide some military trainers. The US has been providing some training for Marines with its special forces. We've seen that Zimbabwe has provided a little bit of training. A couple of companies have been trained, and private military companies have also been involved in training. And that is going on at the moment as well, in terms of trying to tool up aspects of the Air Force and some kind of armored personnel carrier capacity. But these are fragmented approaches that don't effectively deal with the fundamental problems of capacity and competency with the Mozambican military. And we don't see any significant developments in that, in that objective of really making the Mozambican military fit for purpose. And it's going to take some time to get them into that, to have that kind of capacity. In the meantime, unless there is some kind of security arrangement to address the burgeoning threats, and you know, we're very conscious of this being over-militarized, this situation. This is not about sending thousands of troops into Cabo Delgado. First and foremost, there needs to be a great deal of improvement in intelligence gathering as to exactly what the situation is on the ground. And of course, the nature of the relationship between local communities and these insurgents needs to be worked out. There is some empathy in some quarters for the concerns that are raised by some of the insurgents. But let me be very clear, the local leadership of the insurgency have not articulated a clear voice in terms of objectives outside of rejecting the Mozambican state and the ruling party. And those entities are the first to be targeted when they attack these towns. They come with lists of people that they want to take out. And that's what's been happening. Okay. But what was different in the Palma attack was it was a very indiscriminate attack. We hadn't seen that before.
All right. Piers Pigou, thank you so much. We'll leave it there, but thank you for explaining exactly what's happening in Mozambique.